Hello and welcome once again to the hard Brexit scenario on Football Manager 2020, where the UK has left UEFA and had to fend for itself. And it's done pretty well if you ask me. As we have reached the end of the season, the first part of this one, which was part 6, was we saw how all the leagues finished. Well, in this one, the second part of that, which is actually part 7, but you know, we'll not go into pedantics like that. We're going to see who won all the cups, and we might even have a quick peek at some of the goals in one of the finals as well. This is the second time I tried to record it. The first time we watched the game, but unfortunately the sound was a bit off. So, you know, can't have the picture and the sound off. I have to at least only one, you know. So we'll start off where we started off the last one, in Anguilla, to see who won the Knockout Cup there, and we can find out who qualified for the Cup Winners' Cup next season. The final there was LHCS Spartans beating Diamond on penalties after a 2-2 draw, so well done to them. Also in Anguilla there's the President's Cup. That one finished with Kicks United winning 2-1 on aggregate against Attackers. That one is kind of a charity shield, so it actually happened right at the start of the season. But we move on to Bermuda, the biggest of the Caribbean countries in the Brexit scenario. And their Challenge Cup, or their version of the FA Cup, the Bermudan FA Challenge Cup, was won by PHC Zebras. They beat Dandytown Hornets 2-0 in the final. Some more of those great Caribbean team names there. Bermudan Dudley Eve Trophy, and that is played by only the top division teams. PHC Zebras couldn't win that one though. They lost to the North Village Rams 1-0 in the final there. While in the Bermudan Friendship Trophy, which is for the lower division teams, Southampton Rangers won that one. Penalty shootout once again. They beat St David's Warriors after a 2-2 draw. In the the British Virgin Islands next. And they only have one cup, the President's Cup. That's their version of the FA Cup. And Islanders FC won that. 1-0 the final score against International Motors, who are a second tier side. So well done to them for getting there in the first season. So we know 3 of the 12 qualifiers for next season's Cup Winners' Cup. It's time to find out another one, as the Cayman Islands CIFA Cup. The winners of that, Scholars. They beat Academy 2-1 in the final after extra time to make it to win it. And then another Caribbean nation, Montserrat. Well, we're not going to look at Montserrat because they don't actually have a cup. They've literally just got the one tournament. So they're the reason why the leasing.com trophy winner gets a spot in the tournament as well. In the Turks and Caicos Islands, President's Cup is the big competition there that isn't the league, and that one went to penalties as well after a 1-1 draw between Full Physic and SWA Sharks. SWA Sharks took the win and the trophy and the place in the Cup Winners' Cup. In Gibraltar, they have the Gibraltar or Gib Telecom Rock Cup as their main cup competition. And the winners of that were Europa FC, who beat St Joseph's 2-1 in the final at the Victoria Stadium in Gibraltar, which may sound like a big fancy stadium, but it's actually the home of every single team in Gibraltar. So it was kind of a home game for both teams. There's also another competition in Gibraltar, the Pepe Reyes Cup. It's a charity shield. However, Europa FC won both the competitions the year before, which means no one was left to play them. They don't just leave the runners up to play them like in England. In the British territories, there's one cup competition there, and it includes all of the teams that are in the British territories into one big Super Cup. And that one was won by Sark 2-0. So neither Jersey Bulls, who are the second biggest team in the British territories, or Guernsey, who are the biggest team in the British territories, won that one. Considering Guernsey won the Guernsey League at Atakanta, it's quite impressive that Sark beat them in the semi-finals. Jersey Bulls beating Douglas Royal in the semi-finals, and then in the final, Sark won 2-0 against Jersey Bulls. So well done, Sark. You're probably going to get mullered by Man City in the Cup Winners' Cup. Oh, spoiler alert there. Actually, I don't think Man City even won it, did they? We'll find out in a bit. Right, on to the other countries, the home nations. Northern Ireland, their cup competitions, starting with the Irish Cup. That was won by Ballymena United, who beat Linfield 2-1 in the final at Windsor Park, the home of Northern Ireland. Ballymena did done well because they won the County Antrim League as well as that. And did they win the County Antrim Cup? We'll find out in a moment. First we're going to have a look at the quarterfinals here, just to see who made it. So Larne beat Warren Point in the quarterfinals, Ballymena beat Crusaders, Glenavon beat Caledon Rovers, and Linfield knocked out Cliftonville, while in the semi-finals Linfield beat Glenavon and Ballymena beat Larne in an Antrim derby. And as you know, in the final it was 2-1 Ballymena. So in the Belfast League Cup, Knockbreda shocked Linfield to lift the trophy, winning 2-1 after extra time. Considering Linfield are the best team in Northern Ireland pretty much, they haven't won a trophy in the first season. They didn't win the league, they didn't win the League Cup, and they lost in the final of the FA Cup too, so unlucky to them. In County Antrim, Ballymena could not make it a treble, losing to Carrick in the final 2-1. Well done to Carrick. In the County Armagh League Cup, Glenavon won that one 3-0 in the final. They beat Derry Herc at the new Grosvenor Stadium in Lisburn. While in County Down, Warren Point Town beat Ards 3-2 to lift that trophy. County Fermanagh, there we go. Ballina Mallard did the double there, winning the league and League Cup 3-0 in the final. They beat Lisbellow United. Ballina Mallard probably the best team in County Fermanagh, but there's not many teams in County Fermanagh, and maybe some money will start running between the lower, second onwards, and maybe Ballina Mallard might have a challenge next season, although the Northern Irish League doesn't get as much money as the English League, so it's scaled down a bit. Oh, we're not on that yet actually. No, before we do that, there's also County Londonderry, where Limavady United beat Portstewart 2-1 in the final to win the League Cup. And finally in County Tyrone, Strabane Athletic won on penalties against Dergview after a 1-1 tie at the Brandywell in Londonderry. I believe that's all of them. Yeah, and we can move on to Wales and see who won in the Welsh Cup competitions. In the JD Welsh Cup, let's first take a quick foray into the quarterfinals. We knew what the quarterfinals were last time. In fact, the quarterfinals had finished. We hadn't had the semi-final draw, so we knew that Cardiff, Ruffin, Wrexham and Swansea had made the semi-finals. And what happened in those semi-finals? Wrexham beat Cardiff 2-1 at the Millennium Stadium, and Swansea knocked out Ruffin at the Cardiff City Stadium. And then in the final, Swansea City won the tournament 3-0, beating Wrexham in the final at the Cardiff City Stadium, and Swansea qualified, probably going to be one of the better teams in the Cup Winners' Cup next season. Onward. Don't know why I'm clicking that one, because we move on to the Clwyd League Cup, probably the biggest tournament on there out of the League Cups. Wrexham won that one 2-0 in the final, beating Colwyn Bay. While in the Dyfed League Cup, Penlyncock won that one as well, after somehow coming from 4th place to win the Dyfed Premier League. They have also overcome the odds, beating Borth in the final on penalties to do the double in Dyfed. So well done to Penlyncock. In Gwent, Newport County beat Cumbrae Celtic 3-0 in the final. That one was a pretty straightforward one for them, being the biggest team in the county. While in Gwynedd, Bangor City, they beat Holyhead 3-0 at Cabob Parry in Llangefni to win the Gwynedd League Cup. Glamorgan, Merthyr Town, not Merthyr Tydfil, that's what they used to be called, I believe, or the previous team were called. Merthyr Town beat Pontypridd 2-0 to win the Glamorgan League Cup. In Powys, Newtown were the League Cup winners there. They beat Guilsfield 3-1 in the final. While in South Glamorgan, this one's probably going to be a pretty straightforward win for Cardiff, I imagine. Yeah, they beat Barry 2-0 in the final at the Millennium Stadium. Can we see what the crowd was like for that? No, we cannot. Oh well. It might be on one of the fixtures somewhere. I can't be asked to check right now. In West Glamorgan, Swansea City did the treble. They won the league, FA Cup and League Cup, beating Trefellyn BGC in the final at the Cardiff City Stadium. Probably the second home of Swansea with the tournament finals and tournament semi-finals they were playing here. And that is it for Wales. We'll move over to Scotland now. And when I remember how to do it, because apparently I'm an idiot. In the Scottish Cup, if we head over to the quarterfinals once again, no, that's the 6th round, quarterfinals. I think we actually knew the results from the quarterfinals last time as well. Celtic beating Rangers, Motherwell knocking out Livingston, Inverness, Caledonian Thistle beating Cove Rangers, and Kelty Hearts Cup run being ended by St Mirren. While in the semi-finals, St Mirren beat Motherwell 1-0 at Rugby Park, and Celtic beat Inverness Caledonian 3-0 at Murrayfield to set up a Celtic St Mirren final. And as if you look at the top of the screen, you'll know who won. Celtic won it on penalties, 2-2 the final score at Hampden Park, and that's probably not quite what I'd expect from the Celtic final. I thought they'd do better than that, but they did win it, which means they did win a bit better than they did in the league after losing to Rangers in the league and losing the title to Rangers. How about the League Cups? In Angus, Dundee beat Forfar after extra time 2-1, while in the Ayrshire League Cup, Kilmarnock won that one, beating Irvine Meadow 2-0 in the final there. In Central Scotland, Falkirk got the straightforward 3-0 win over Stenhousemuir, and in Dumfries and Galloway, Annan Athletic beat Gretna 2008 2-1 in the final. Where's the big team in Dumfries and Galloway? Is Queen of the South, and where did they go out? They lost to Annan in the semi-finals, so well done to Annan there, getting themselves a little bit of money, not too much. How much did I put down for the League Cup in this one? 100,000 there. That's not much really, but still a bit of cash for Annan Athletic. In Fife, Kelty Hearts, I don't know who this team are, but they have caught the imagination this season. They got to the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup, did really well in the league, and lost in the final of the League Cup to Dunfermline Athletic 2-1 after extra time. So well done to Kelty Hearts. You've had a good season. Hope to see more of it next season. In the Glasgow League Cup, Celtic beat BSC Glasgow in the final to do a trophy double, winning the FA Cup and the League Cup, and they did it at Hampden Park both times. In Grampian, Aberdeen beat Cove Rangers 3-1 to take that one. In the Highlands and Islands, Inverness Caledonian Thistle won that one 2-0, but the big story possibly I'd say is Fort William making the final. Considering in real life they are perennial losers, they've won one match in like 4 years. They got to the final of the League Cup, so well done to them. Clearly the teams underneath can't be that good. In Lanarkshire, Motherwell beat Hamilton 2-1 in the final, while in Lothian, Heart of Midlothian, to be more precise, beat Livingston 2-1 in the final to take the Edinburgh spoils. In Perthshire, that one was a given, St Johnstone winning 3-0 against Jeanfield Swifts at East End Park in Dunfermline, while in Renfrewshire, St Mirren took that one 3-0 against Port Glasgow, which apparently is not in Glasgow. And finally, Scottish Borders, Gala Ferrydean Rovers beat Coldstream 2-0 in the final, and that leaves one tournament left in Scotland. That's the Tunnock's Caramel Wafer Challenge Cup, and who won that one? Preston Athletic beat Leith. Now this is a tournament just for teams outside of the top tier, so there's a fair chance we wouldn't have heard of many of these teams, but it was a Lothian Championship derby in the final at Hampden Park. Can we see what the attendance was for that one? No, we cannot. Oh well. England. We can see who won the FA Cup now. Going all the way down here. We'll see these ones in a minute. Brexit Champions League and Empire League. But first, the FA Cup. In the final there, you can see we'll have a quick look at the quarterfinals first. So Manchester City beat Watford, Man U knocked out Arsenal 2-1. Burton Albion made the semi-finals after beating Barnsley on penalties, and Tottenham beat Chelsea 2-1. So Burton, the big story I'd say there, because the other three teams that made the semis are fairly obvious ones. In the semi-finals, Tottenham beat Burton 1-0, while Manchester City knocked out Manchester United in a Manchester Derby semi-final. 2-0 the final score there. Apparently I forgot to put neutral stadiums in for the semi-finals there, so apologies. Meanwhile, in the final, Tottenham were not able to win another trophy after winning the Greater London League. Instead, Manchester City took that one, winning 2-1 at Wembley, which is another tournament for Man City, but not the league, because Man U beat them to the league title. It's like in Scotland with Celtic and Rangers. Unlucky City, but lucky City. On to the League Cup results. Luton beat Kempston 2-0 to win the Bedfordshire League Cup, while in Berkshire, Reading won that one. 2-0 the final score against Maidenhead United. In Bristol and Gloucestershire, Bristol City did the double, beating Cheltenham 1-0 in the final there, while in Buckinghamshire, MK Dons were the champions there, beating Chesham 3-1 after extra time. In Cambridgeshire, Peterborough are the big team up there, and they beat Peterborough Sports to prove they were the big team, getting a double, winning 3-0 in the final. In Cheshire, Macclesfield Town beat Chester 2-1 in the final to win the Cheshire League Cup, while in Cornwall, the biggest team in Cornwall, Truro City, breezed through the final there, beating Callington 3-0 at Poltaire Park in St Austell. In Cumbria, this one was a surprise one, as Carlisle were denied a double, as Barrow beat them 2-1 to take the Cumbria League Cup and get £5 million to go with the £50 million they got for finishing second in the Cumbrian League. In Derbyshire, Derby won that one 2-0 against Alfreton in the final, while in Devon, Torquay took that trophy 1-0 in the final, beating Plymouth Argyle, denying them a double as well. In Dorset, no double denied there for Bournemouth. They got their one easy, 3-0 win against Weymouth in the final. And in Durham, Hartlepool got their double as well, beating Spennymoor 1-0 in the final of the Durham League Cup. In Essex, that one went to penalties, a 1-1 final score, but Colchester were not able to win that one. Instead, Southend took it via penalty kicks at the Mems Priestfield Stadium in Gillingham. Over to Greater London now, and I'll drift back a couple of rounds, or to the semi-finals at least, to see who went through there, with Chelsea beating West Ham and Tottenham beating Palace in the semi-finals. Where were Arsenal? Arsenal lost to Spurs in the quarter-finals, while Chelsea got a lucky draw against Sutton. But yeah, back to the final. Tottenham, another final they were beaten in, losing 2-1 to Chelsea at the London Stadium. In Greater Manchester, we had another Manchester derby. Well, they're all Manchester derbies in Greater Manchester, but the main Manchester derby, with Manchester City getting a measure of revenge against Manchester United from losing the league to them. But once again, Man City win another trophy. So in the end, they've won 3 so far, because they won the Cup Winners' Cup, the FA Cup, and the Greater Manchester League Cup. Is there another one on its way? In Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Southampton won that 3-0 against Aldershot in the final at Wembley. So a nice day out of Wembley for Aldershot. In Hertfordshire, Watford, straightforward wins. Well, not that straightforward, losing as they conceded, and beat London Colney 2-1 at the Emirates Stadium in London. In Kent, Gillingham won that one 2-0 against Ebbsfleet, while in Lancashire, Burnley, they may not have won the Lancashire League, but they did beat Preston in the final of the League Cup to win that one. 4-0 final score at the City of Manchester Stadium. Right, that lovely big stadium's being used for the finals here. In Leicestershire and Rutland, Leicester, that one was pretty obvious. They beat Barwell 2-0 in the final. While in Lincolnshire, Scunthorpe beat Grimsby 1-0 in the final there, in a kind of home game, I'd say, at the Iron Arena in Scunthorpe. A little bit cheating, it's supposed to be a neutral venue. In Merseyside, that one was pretty obvious. We kind of knew Liverpool were going to win after they beat Everton in the semi-finals. They were going to play Tranmere or Southport, and they played Tranmere in the end and won 3-0 at Old Trafford, so winning a trophy at the home of one of their biggest rivals. Norwich won the Norfolk League Cup 3-0 against Wroxham, while in Northamptonshire, Northampton won that one 2-0 against Brackley. Another double winner when Nottingham Forest, as they beat Mansfield 3-0 to win the Nottinghamshire League Cup, while Oxford took the Oxfordshire League Cup, beating Oxford City, so United beating City 4-0 in the final. Moving on to Shropshire, the 2 biggest teams in Shropshire, Shrewsbury and TNS, fought it out, so a 1-1 draw, and Shrewsbury took the trophy on penalties at New Bucks Head. While in Somerset, Yeovil, they also won on penalties. Despite being the biggest team and the Somerset Premier Division winners, they had to save it for penalties before they could beat Weston-super-Mare in the final. In Staffordshire, Stoke City, they got the double. They won the Staffordshire League on goal difference, and they didn't need goal difference this time. They got the win against Hednesford. While in Suffolk, Ipswich got their double, beating Bury Town 2-1 in the final. In Surrey, Woking also got a double. They beat South Park, not that one, 2-1 in the final at Stompond Lane, possibly one of the smaller stadiums used for one of the League Cup finals. In Sussex, Brighton, another double winner. They went to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to beat Crawley 2-0 to win the Sussex League Cup, while Newcastle beat North Shields 3-1 at the Stadium of Light, home of their big rivals, to win the Tyne and Wear League Cup. In Warwickshire, Stratford once again upset the odds. They denied Nuneaton the league, they denied Nuneaton the League Cup in the group stage, and now they denied Leamington in the final on penalties at the Oval in Bedworth. Well done, Stratford. Big money for you. I'm expecting big signings in the new season. In the West Midlands, Wolves, they got a double. Pretty sure they won the league anyway. They beat Walsall 2-1. While in Wiltshire, Swindon did the double. There's quite a few double winners this season. I'm hoping it breaks up a bit in the next few years once the money starts flowing. Swindon beat Salisbury 2-1 to win the Wiltshire one, while in Worcestershire, Kidderminster also did the double, beating Redditch 1-0 and in the final. In Yorkshire, this one was not a double, as Leeds were denied that on penalties by Huddersfield Town after the two teams drew 2-2 at Hillsborough. So well done, Huddersfield. On to the final tournament, the final domestic tournament. It's the Leasing.com trophy for tiers in the lower divisions and Northumberland and Herefordshire. And as you can see there, the two champions of Northumberland and Herefordshire were the teams that made the final, Tweedmouth and Hereford won it on penalties after a 1-1 draw at Wembley Stadium. A lovely day for the two teams. Can we see what the crowd was for that one? Oh, I think we might actually be able to. Yes, we can. Do they show the attendance on here? I don't think they do. Oh well, so that was either way. Before we move on to the Brexit Champions League, let's have a look at the actual Champions League and see who has done well in that one. So I'm going to go back to the quarterfinals, I believe is where we were at last time, with Bayern Munich beating Olympiacos, Juventus beating Benfica, Atletico Madrid knocked out Paris Saint-Germain, and Shakhtar beat Bayer Leverkusen. While in the semi-finals, Juventus beat Shakhtar, Bayern Munich beat Atletico Madrid, and in the final, Juventus beat Bayern Munich, or Zebra, call them what you will. They won 2-1 against Bayern Munich in the final at the Millennium Stadium, which means Juventus won it and Cristiano Ronaldo won it. It's a good win for them. In the Europa League, we'll go to the quarterfinals there too. There we go. So in the quarterfinals there, Wolfsburg beat Partizan Belgrade, Roma knocked out Getafe, Borussia Mönchengladbach beat St Etienne, and Sevilla beat Espanyol in a Spanish derby. While in the semi-finals, Roma knocked out Borussia Mönchengladbach and Wolfsburg beat Sevilla on aggregate. Not in the second leg though, because Sevilla took that one 1-0 away. In the final, Roma did a second Italian win, and this one went to penalties against Wolfsburg at the San Marino Stadium in Serravalle, or Serraval. Call it. I don't know how you pronounce it, but San Marino got to host the tournament. That's what happens when you just put neutral venue for the final. Finally, in the Euro Cup 2, start from the quarterfinals there as well. Inter Milan beat Moreirense 2-0, 4-0 on aggregate, while Athletic Bilbao beat Aris Salonika. Marseille knocked out Mlade Boleslav, and Young Boys beat Astragugu, the West Ham haters. I don't know if they hate West Ham, they just keep knocking them out. They kept knocking them out of European tournaments a few years back. In the semi-finals, Inter Milan beat Bilbao and Marseille eliminated Young Boys, leaving us with a final of Inter Milan and Marseille, which Inter Milan won, which meant all three European competitions were won by Inter Milan. Well, not by Inter Milan, were won by Italian teams, Inter winning theirs at Windsor Park in Belfast. So two of the European trophy finals were played in Brexit stadiums. So I should have really fixed that, shouldn't I? Ah, well. It's not the end of the world, is it? Over to the Brexit Champions League and Empire League. We'll start with the Empire League, because afterwards we're going to see the goals from the Brexit Champions League final. So in the Empire League, we'll go back to where I believe we were at the quarterfinals last time, with Wolves beating Exeter, Man U beating Hearts, Man City beating Stevenage, and Tottenham beating Rangers. Now, if you remember, because I've explained this every time, but you might be new to watching this, because of the Gibraltar teams not having a, or the Gibraltar League not having a winners or runners up from the last one because they set up a new system, the two probably the best team ranked that weren't already qualified for these tournaments got to take their place. So Man City and Man U are in both tournaments, and apparently they're both in the semi-finals of this one. But they both went out in the semi-finals in this one. Tottenham beating Man City 2-1 on aggregate after winning 2-0 in the first leg and losing 1-0 in the first leg but winning the second leg 2-0, while Wolves beat Man United in the semi-finals, and that was, if we have a quick look and see what the actual results are. Spoiler alert there. So in the first legs, it was first leg Tottenham beat Man City, not the second leg. And the first leg, Man U beat Wolves 2-0 in the first leg. So in the second leg, Man City could only win 1-0. But this is the more impressive result, I'd say. Wolves beating Man U 3-0 in the second leg to deny them a spot in the Empire League final. And as you saw earlier, the final went as follows: Tottenham beating Wolves 2-1 in the final. Parrott scoring the winner, Troy Parrott getting the winner after Wolves went ahead as well. Let's not forget that. So well done to Spurs on being the first Empire League champions. They get to go one better next time though, because they've qualified for the Champions League because they won the Greater London Premier Division. Finally, the Brexit Champions League. Now we'll have a look at the final in a moment. But in the quarterfinals, Man City knocked out Nottingham Forest, Chelsea beat Watford, Celtic beat Newcastle, and Man U beat Ross County. Now, if you watched the last video, you know that I said exactly that would happen. So I feel I deserve props for that. I'm quite glad. I'm quite happy I predicted it. I mean, it was the easiest predictions ever to make apart from Celtic Newcastle. But yeah, anyway. In the semi-finals, Chelsea beat Man U and Celtic lost to City 4-2 and 6-3 on aggregate respectively. So the final was Chelsea versus Man City. So coming up are the match highlights, or the match goals pretty much. So you can see the starting lineups there. No real big signings. The only one really is Bernat at Man City. He is the only new signing out of them. João Cancelo, I don't recognise him, but I think he is a Man City player. I think he's one of their signings from last year. Other than that, there's no big new signings. Everyone is normal. Chelsea can't make any signings because their transfer ban didn't get removed on this one. And let's move over to the goals and how things went down. So the fun started after only 3 minutes with João Cancelo passing to Mahrez, who scored and made it 1-0 to Manchester City, and apparently he floated across the screen there. Then later on it was 2-0 to Manchester City when Raheem Sterling scored a lovely volley, and it was 2-0 after only 16 minutes. Aguero then scored a penalty to make it 3-0 to Manchester City, and it seemed like it was all over. But Chelsea got themselves a penalty just before half-time to make it 3-1. And would they be out of the tie? Let's find out, because on 85 minutes, Kovacic passed it over to Reece James, who crossed it in, and then Hudson-Odoi made it 3-2. Would it be the unthinkable? Could Chelsea catch up? Well, could Chelsea come back? Well, yes, they could, as Emerson put the ball in to Hudson-Odoi, who crossed it to Mount, who put it down. There was a bit of penalty area pinball, but in the end, Christian Pulisic scored the goal that gave Chelsea an equaliser. But it wasn't over, because just before the match finished, in the last minute of the match, João Cancelo went on a crazy run and scored a wonder goal to give Manchester City the Brexit Champions League. Yes, as you can see there, the final score 4-3. What a game in the final. It was quite fun, like doing it when I was recording the original one, but apparently sound was dodgy. So unfortunately for you guys, you just have to make do with the goals, that was pretty good anyway. So that's it for the cups and all that. What I'm going to do now, just because for fun, we'll have a quick look at those managers that I bookmarked at the start of the season, see where are they now after one season at their new clubs. Alan Pardew, he left Corby after 5 months, so after 5 or 6 months, and went to Southend and won their 6 League Cups. So he did pretty well, got runners up in the league as well. What about David Moyes? He is still at Bury. No, he's not. He got sacked after 4 months, despite winning, getting to the second round of the Greater Manchester League Cup. Maybe because they were knocked out by Brantham in the FA Cup. That might be one reason why he got sacked. But not good for David Moyes. What about Emma Hayes, the Chelsea women's manager? She is still at Racing Club Warwick, finishing 9th in the Warwickshire Premier Division. And so apparently a standard season for her. She's not been sacked, so it's better than David Moyes. Well done her. Harry Kewell, former Liverpool winger. He was manager of Aylesbury Vale until April and then left to become Staines manager, where he finished as runners-up in the Surrey Premier Division. So probably a good run into the season, although he was only manager for about 3 weeks of the season. But lots of chopping and changing here. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, how did he do? As manager of Gillingham Town, he is still there. In fact, he finished 10th and was eliminated in the first round of both tournaments, but he did not leave. He is still there. So pretty average for Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. Stuart Pearce, he was Wroxham manager when we last checked, and he is still Wroxham manager, finishing runners-up in the Norfolk League Cup and 4th in the league. So a decent season for Stuart Pearce, possibly one of the more successful ones. Teddy Sheringham, Axminster. He left as manager of Axminster in January to become Falkirk under-19s manager. I don't know if that's a step up or down. Where did Axminster finish? 13th in the Devon Premier Division. So step up, step down. Didn't do anything at Falkirk under-19s apparently. Finally, Wes Brown, the former Manchester United defender, was Bridlington manager until February, when he left to become manager of Frickley, he didn't get promoted. He went to Frickley in the Championship and did not get promoted, losing to Sheffield in the semi-finals of the playoffs. So there you have it. There's a bit of fun for you. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time when we have a special. It's a special Euro 2020 edition, where we'll be taking a look at what happened in Euro 2020 and possibly looking at some more of the goals like we did on this one. Maybe the semi-finals even, I don't know, it depends how long it takes. But until then, why don't you rock on, like and subscribe.